Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. This is the EV broadcast on a Tuesday morning. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
Our guest this morning,
he's here. He's in the waiting room now.
He's in the waiting room. Okay. It's John Stringer, by the way, with the Tesla Silicon Valley Owners Group. Well-respected, well-known.
Okay, I'm bringing him in. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
While we're waiting for John to come on, you were telling me that John and his group kind of got their start in 2018. They were helping with the Model 3 deliveries.
During the Model 3 release, yes. And his group volunteered to help get these in the hands of owners, which was very much appreciated by Tesla. Again, a partnership between owners and, Tesla.
That's a very cool thing with that group.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Hey, John.
Hello, John.
Let me
How are you?
see, for some reason, actually you're muted. Okay.
All right, there we go. We're getting you on now. You should be able to hear us.
Can you hear us now, John?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. All right. And we don't have video. Yes, we do. It's coming up now. Hello, John. John, where's your hat?
It's at home.
Okay. Well, it's fine. You can do without a hat. We were going to ask you to wear sunglasses, but then someone pointed out, well, he does kind of wear sunglasses. They're tinted a bit. So you're good to go there. Yeah, there he is. Thank you for joining us, John.
Well, I just need to walk outside to get my sunglasses tinted, and then we should be good.
Yeah, there you go. We get some sunlight there. So, one of the things that we were going to talk pre-show, but we can do it during the show, is watching some of your videos. Fascinating, by the way. A lot of focus on, what was it like talking to Elon, going to, was it Fremont factory or Texas, I believe. Well, anyway, what I thought we could do today is, since a lot of that has already been hashed and rehashed, your thoughts on a number of different current topics regarding EV. Mm-hmm. And before we get too far, do we have a background image with the five gentlemen at the during the Elon interview? We could pop that up as our background.
And and while you're popping that up, Jesse, for our listeners and viewers on Instagram, you are going to be seeing the green screen. You are going to be hearing John Stringer, but not seeing him. You'll just see the two of us, Pete and Mark. Mm-hmm. Everybody else will be able to see all three of us.
Where is that image?
In the folder.
It's in the main folder, I believe.
Called background-2. We can't see it, John. We just see you on our screen this time around when we have a Zoom call, apparently. So we normally do all this in pre-show, but we're under the gun here to get this thing rolling.
Okay, there we go.
Is it up?
Thank you,
Yeah,
Jesse.
you guys aren't going to see it, but the audience can see it.
Perfect. All right. So, yeah, we thought we would start with that. And since this is probably the most famous image of you and the Tesla Silicon Valley Owners Group, maybe you can just briefly tell us what motivated you to start this group?
Easy to think that it's already been half a decade. But just like a lot of, early Tesla owners, it was really just getting into the car and really, experiencing full self-driving or autopilot at the time, experiencing the speed, experiencing just the Model 3 at the time when it launched back in 2017, 2018 was really unlike anything on the road. And so my first Tesla was a Model 3. And so I really wanted to just get connected with the Tesla community. Mm-hmm. And little did I know how strong it was on Twitter, or now X. And so I got on Twitter at the time, which is, again, now X, and just started communicating with some owners. Literally, my first tweet on our account was, hey, Bay Area, where are the Tesla owners at? And from there, I found out about the owners program through a couple of people like Trevor Page from Model 3 Owners or Tesla Owners Online, and was able to start it and, just started building the community, having events on monthly and regular basis, and really, kind of growing it from there. And now we are the largest club in North America, obviously have the biggest following, really in the Tesla ecosystem outside of Elon and Tesla itself, especially on X. We're one of the largest Tesla affiliated or accounts that talk about Tesla or relate to Tesla on X.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and obviously we run a local club, but we're a lot more than that, which we can get into details if you want to deep dive into that. But again, it was just getting into the guard, driving it. That's really what spurred my desire to like connect with other owners and, and then eventually just finding out about the program and starting it.
Yeah. Well, I think you've noticed, like we did, that Tesla is very much into partnerships. They're not going to give the time of day to the haters and the people that disparage them, but the people that support the cause definitely will develop a relationship with Tesla, and we've been enjoying that ourselves, being the foremost early Tesla repair organization for the Roadsters, and a lot of communication. IP exchange. One of the unique positions we're in is we're able to see how these cars move through time. What happens as they age? What kind of engineering problems crop up as they get older? And what kind of repairs? And we share a lot of this with the service centers. So, yeah, like you, I congratulate you. Partnering with Tesla is definitely a smart thing to do. So one of the things that... Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's it's definitely, especially through the years, the companies faced, as especially with the Roadster days and everything, and being one of the first companies to fix them, the companies faced an incredible amount of like fake news, hate, FUD, whatever you want to call it, over the years. And so, the people that have been strong advocates, I think they're always happy to partner with and connect with. So, and I can definitely say that's true of Elon himself as well.
Totally. So one of the things that we thought we would open with is thoughts on the UAW and the impact on Tesla. And actually, Mark and I did a short little video that's out there in our YouTube Shorts right now. Do you want to paraphrase? And
well, sure. It was more about. I'm gonna step back just a second, Pete. I'm having one of those moments.
Okay.
We had the UAW and Tesla, and really kind of calling out the UAW for what they've been trying to do to the automakers and how much of an advantage that's going to give Tesla.
And I think you were talking about the fact that some articles that you had begun to collect indicated that there was some hidden agenda in Fine's plan with, what appears to be crippling the ICE manufacturers in the U.S. I mean, timing is terrible, John. Here we are at a point where these incumbents, and some of them are over 100 years old, are needing to transition and pivot into a new transportation technology. And they're going to have a very difficult time doing that because their entire infrastructure has been based on ICE for, many decades. And so here we are now with an expected downturn in revenue while they're transitioning. And we have suddenly this massive, demand from the labor portion.
Yeah, what we had talked about, and what I had talked about and kind of ranted about was, it seems like Tesla is the hidden topic on this whole strike. The big three automakers are saying we have to be competitive, and then Sean Fain's going back and saying, well, competitive is just another word for race to the bottom. And in that same interview that he had with Face of the Nation about a week and a half ago, he said, hey, once I'm done with the big three, I'm going to come after Tesla. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything related to this UAW stuff.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing now is actually really just legacy auto at its best, and that's not throwing shade, but literally, you have legacy auto who have essentially pretty much taken all of their parts that are put into their car and put it into this auto bidder, which goes out to hundreds of suppliers that can bid on it and make that part. And really, what that has created has, like, when you see Ford on the front of a Ford truck, it's really not really made, or it's kind of like assembled by Ford, but it's made by like over 500 suppliers. And I guess what I'm trying to say is they really don't own any aspect of, like, the car actually being built, other than probably it just being assembled, right? And so they've pretty much I think it's since the 1970s is really what's happened and where that started. And how the legacy auto transitioned at that point. And the UAW, I think, and this business model that they have is the exact same representation of that. And so it's just an old model that is going to continue to cripple legacy auto. We know that the UAW is asking for 40% more wages at 20% less work. And so what did the companies start doing in response? They literally started laying people off. And it's one of those things where Ford and GM have stated publicly that they will not make a profitable EV until the end of, till 2030 probably. And so now you're trying to increase their wages. You're trying to reduce the amount of time that they actually work by 40% increase in wage and 20% less work. Like, these companies are not going to make anything. And so it's one of those things where I think they're starting to realize really kind of it's like a ball and chain, I guess is what you can say. It's like, you're trying to move down and trying to move forward, but you realize there's just something you just can't get off your leg or off your back, which is, in this case, would be the UAW. And so I can say, I've seen the metrics out of like Nevada and what the wage workers and factory workers are paid out of Giga, Nevada. It's something that is public records that Tesla shared. They make close to $50 an hour. And that's excluding any executives. There's pretty much no executives out of the Giga, Nevada factory. And that's significantly more than anything that the UAW will put together. And also, too, Tesla workers get stock. And if you look at what the stock has done over the past 4 or 5 years, I mean, it's gone 10x. It's just like, so I've met service technicians who come to my house who are millionaires now because they've been at Tesla 6-7 years. And it's the only reason why they can afford and live and even own a home in the Bay Area. It's because of the Tesla stock. And so there's just a lot of differences here. Again, there's some companies like Ford who I'm rooting for because they're, I think, the most forward thinking out of all of the legacy auto. But the reality is they're not doing. I think the reality is that they're facing a huge uphill battle, not only against clearly outside parties, but against themselves, right? Because again, they have created a business model that Tesla has taken and turned upside down, which is direct to consumer and very forward facing, as far as, they don't have all of these like third party dealerships or other people that are owning the customer experience.
Right.
They get to own that from start to finish because they're direct to consumer. And so, like I said, it's one of those things where, as we can see, especially in the US, these are the most American-made cars, and they own the full stack of software and hardware. I mean, there's very few companies other than like outside of like Google that can even say that they do that. But the UAW is, I think we saw that specifically with this current administration. Not to get political here, but it's one of those things that I think it was December of 2021, I think it was, when they hosted the EV summit, and they brought all of these legacy auto and really union worker companies to this EV summit to talk about EVs, and they did not invite Tesla. And Tesla is the leader, and they're the only reason why we're talking about EVs, and they ignored them. And because it just clearly showed that this is about money, this is about patting the back on the UAW and other people that paid the way for certain people to get into office. And so it's just one of those things where, in that same quarter, GM produced 26 EVs and Tesla produced over 300,000. Right. And yet Mary Barra is being told or seen as the EV leader.
Right.
So it's gotten ridiculous. I think that things have kind of changed a little bit. But I think, unfortunately, legacy auto has got this huge, they have to climb Mount Everest in order to get through all of this. And I don't know if they'll be able to make it. And some of them probably won't, especially, again, because imagine when you start a company, it's different starting a company when you're starting with a fresh slate versus taking a company from being hardware, making it software. I mean, Jim Farley has gotten on, I think it was Fully Charged, and he's been very vocal about their uphill battle But changing the mind of legacy auto is hard because they have this profitable business, which is gas cars, and they're trying to invest into the future. And yet the problem is that the gas business is still profitable for them. And
Right.
so it's kind of like one
Right.
of those things. It's like a chicken and egg thing. It's like you want to invest in the egg, which is EVs, it's the future. But the problem is the more you sell EVs, the more money you lose. And yet the more gas cars you sell, the more profit you make. So versus Tesla, making it through all of those years, and the incredible feat that they've been able to accomplish, and making it and starting a company ground up.
That's actually a really good point that you're making too, that selling more EVs is going to cannibalize your ICE business. And whether you're Ford, GM, or any of the others, we've talked, we recently had a gentleman named Mike Maloney on our podcast, and he talked about this S-curve and the adoption S-curve, how we're getting to the point where adoption rates on EVs are going to go up fairly rapidly, and adoption rates at the same time on legacy autos is going to go down very rapidly, pretty much at the same time. Do you think it makes more sense that Ford has gone ahead and split those two divisions, or that it makes more sense like General Motors or Stellantis? They're trying to keep everything still bundled in as one division, and effectively they're trying, it seems like, to hide some of the EV costs because you can't find profitability or loss statements for General Motors like you can for Ford.
Yeah, it really comes up to what is the company trying to accomplish. If I was running the company, I would probably, unless there's not a clear path to profitability, the sooner that or the longer that you keep that stuff together, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, but I mean, sure, I get it. You want transparency, and certain companies like, they have split their companies into, to break out the major segments, or, maybe there's multiple companies, kind of like Alphabet or Google. There's multiple companies within it. And so they do various reporting. Same thing with Apple as well. So it really depends, but I would say probably from their perspective, it probably makes most sense to keep it separate, or to keep it together. Ford is going to that's going to be the thing about Ford. Unless the investors understand that this is going to be a very long road ahead. And I think Ford has done a good job. So that's the thing. It's like, there's the part of me, it's like, hey, you should just keep it together, hide it. Because it's like, we all know, like, there's certain companies that innovate, like Apple, for example. We all know that they've worked on certain products that they have not told the world about. And yet they're incubating it, and, no one hears about it. And there's very few leaks. And then there's other companies who will be building stuff, and they'll be very vocal about that. And I think it's one of those things where if you don't have to share how much potentially how many billions of dollars you're like losing or spending, that will get rid of some of the noise. But as we saw with Tesla, right? Because Tesla was, if you think about it, as it was in the early days of stock, it was just an EV business. They didn't have a gas and an electric vehicle. And so everyone could see what it was doing and scrutinizing the heck out of it. And same thing with Ford. So Ford starts giving out metrics on how their EV business is going to ramp. Their stock may get hit harder, even though the ICE business is doing super well. They're going to get nixed if anything on the EV side, because again, it's being traded as one company, but seen as two.
Right.
So it really just depends on, like, what your methodology is. But I can see the case for both. I think on my end, I would probably say, for these legacy auto, they don't need additional scrutiny. They just need to adopt and start making electric vehicles as soon as possible and make that transition, even if it's going to suck for a couple of years on their stock or their earnings. Because this is no longer whether it's going to happen. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. I mean, California is a perfect example. 2035, it's like all the electric vehicles sold in the state have to be EV. All cars in California have to be EV. So, it's really, I think it really just depends on what the company wants to do. But I can see especially if you're trying to eventually launch and grow the EV business, it's keeping it collected together is probably, you're going to face the least amount of noise.
Yeah. What I find humorous is humorous and also noteworthy. We've got two big labor unions currently that don't seem to understand the current situation. Take the writers' strike, for example. At the beginning of this year, we became aware of ChatGPT 4. And people were impressed with that. There are even people writing books with ChatGPT 4. We've got an author that chimes in regularly. We use it here continuously, and I have to put my ego aside. I fancy myself a writer, but I can't perform like ChatGPT 4. So here we are. We've got this huge existential threat to the writers that is front and center. The studio execs, however, they like status quo. They're not that technical. I'm sure they're looking into it. But why, at this moment in time, when this gigantic existential threat exists, do you go on strike and force your employers to explore other options? I find this with the UAW as well. If one thing evolution has taught us in the survival of the fittest is that you never, as a parasite, you never kill your host.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. We have just compounded the existential threat to the legacy auto manufacturers because we were already concerned that they were going to make it. Of course, there are things like government bailouts that are going to occur and all that, but they still have to survive.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, what is the strategy, behind closed doors at either of these labor unions? What are they thinking? Who's guiding them? Who's advising them? And do they see what the rest of us see?
I love your point, Pete, and I'd love to hear John weigh in on that too, because Sean Payne has been very vocal about looking backwards. He said, hey, these guys have made $250 billion over the last 10 years. We want ours.
We want a share of that. Yeah.
We deserve our fair share of that. And that's such a backward-looking way of looking at this, and they're not looking at the future at all.
Right.
So, what do you think, John?
Yeah, I really think that, there's something to be said. I've talked to a couple of union workers. There's a lady, a good friend named Amy, who is an autopilot, is a pilot for 787 for one of the major airlines. And, I think she gave some good perspective in that there is something to be said that, the wages that the probably current employees are backdated. We all know the amount of inflation that we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years, especially with COVID. So there is something to be said of like, they need to have some type of increase, but saying 40% with 20% less work, it's absolutely, I think, in my opinion, ridiculous. I think they need to have some meeting of the minds. And I think that there's been some paths made with Ford, and I think the other companies are still up in the air. I think actually the president is actually going to visit the UAW right now. Or I think I just saw a tweet literally go off right now. So it's one of those things where I think unfortunately, the UAW is only going to be looking out for themselves, looking out for their employees, even though it's like you also have to have some of the interest of the company as well, because if the company's not doing well, this means that a bunch of your workers are going to be out of work, which is like exactly like what you were saying, is that you don't want to kill the host, right?
Right.
But the truth is, with Legacy Auto, you all probably know Sandy Monroe pretty well, or have heard the name. He said, go to Michigan and look at like the top revenue earners, and it's all dealerships. It's not the actual OEMs. It's the dealerships that are making all the money.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things. It's the same thing. It's the UAW. It's these suppliers. It's these dealerships. All these things are part of the Legacy Auto business model.
There are multiple layers of profit taking, which just compounds the problem. And like you mentioned earlier, Tesla was smart enough to control the sales channel. They turned their drivers and their owners into the biggest sales organization, auto sales organization this planet has ever seen. You're right. That's part of this existential threat. There are a number of business models that have to be reversed and modified or scrubbed in order for these guys to survive. But here we now have the UAW that has their hand out, and we're all wondering, are they going to make it?
Good question.
John,
Yeah, exactly.
full self-driving. One of our AI podcasts just recently, we talked about the fact that Tesla has gone from rule-based full self-driving, hundreds of thousands of lines of code that describe traffic conditions, traffic signs, lane markings, and all that, to mimicking human driving. Do you have any comments on whether this is going to be more successful than this rules-based method?
Yeah, I mean, great question. The reason why I'm like taking a moment is just because I do feel like in the past month or so, I've really had a better understanding of how Tesla is solving real world AI or full self-driving. So just some quick context too about myself. I was actually the first public beta tester really for the full self-driving beta program ever that was publicly able to talk about their experience back in October of 2020. So it's crazy. It's been 3 years. So, but yeah, I was the first public beta tester. So I've seen how they've improved over the years. But when you think of like the future of full self-driving, the way Tesla's tackling it is thinking about it through how am I seeing and how am I navigating, right? Like, if you think about it, like the way that they're tackling it is through being able to not write all of this code saying, hey, if you see a red light, this is what you do. Because you know how long the code is going to be? It's going to be insane because you're going to have to look up every edge case and then just say, okay, and create all of these redundant loops. Oh, if you see this, but then if you see a person, you do this. And the thing is, I was actually driving the other day. I went to an event out in Sacramento area. It was a winery, and it was literally a dirt road, a lake right next to me, and I didn't even put on the navigation of the map. And I literally just turned on full self-driving beta, and it literally took me around the whole lake. Again, there was maybe some brush, but it didn't take me into the lake. It literally just stayed on the dirt road, and I was able to see it. Again, I didn't even have the maps on. I wasn't navigating anywhere. I just turned it on, and it was just going.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was one of those things where they're like, even for red lights or for stop signs, or for unprotected left-hand turns, they didn't write a bunch of code to say, hey, deal with this like this. It was untrained. Obviously, for the stop sign, they did have to write an edge case there because of the NHTSA or whatever it was for rolling stops in California. But outside of that, everything is just happening real time, and it will get better as you continue to feed the system with trained video. So for example, Elon was driving the other day, he was doing a live stream, and it messed up. There was only one disengagement on a 45-minute drive, and he was like, oh, we'll fix that by just feeding it a bunch of videos on that edge case, and then next thing you know, you just kind of go on your way. And so I think that's really the thing here is, if you try to tackle something by writing a bunch of code for edge cases, you're going to just continue to just have to write code all the time, and your updates are going to be only as good as all of the code that you've written, right, or all of the fixes that you've had. Because as I've I'm not by no means an expert in coding, but I've done some SQL and things like that. And again, you always come up with that one edge case that you have to then create another piece of code for, just to be like, okay, let me insert that in the web of like 15 if statements or whatever those things may be. And so the way that Tesla's tackling it, they're doing it from a general perspective, from a general autonomy perspective. So whether you're in Montana, Florida, or in San Francisco, you can turn on full self-driving. Whereas Cruise and Waymo, they're just doing 2 or 3 major, they're just tackling it from, doing 2 or 3 major cities and trying to figure out how to navigate through the real world by doing that. Whereas Tesla is just saying, hey, it doesn't matter where you are, just you need to be able to turn it on. And they're creating it, let's just build a strong foundation, not, okay, here's the code for San Francisco, here's the code for Austin, here's the code for Las Vegas, right? So you'll be able to do a lot more long term than some of these companies that are tackling it from just the perspective of, doing it city by city.
Sure. John, one of the things that I found interesting was when I first heard that it is more effective and efficient to mimic human driving, I immediately thought, with all of the crappy drivers out there, this is a mistake.
Yeah.
Because we now have AI involved in learning how to drive lousy, which, by the way, is one of my personal feelings in Europe, Germany, for example. Parents don't teach their children to drive because they're going to pass on all those bad habits.
Right.
You actually have to go through a 6-month training program. You have to spend lots of money to get your driver's license, and professionals teach these kids how to drive. And for those of you that have driven in Germany, especially on the Autobahn with unlimited speeds, you have extraordinarily disciplined drivers. It's a joy to drive there, and you feel relatively safe, even at triple-digit speeds. All right. Then Tesla said, we're not just taking any videos, we're actually screening them. We're auditing, and we're only taking the best drivers and inserting those into this AI function or into the self-driving function. So that was encouraging for me. The other thing that I found noteworthy about this method is, who on this planet has more driving videos than Tesla?
Right.
I mean, they are uniquely positioned to feed AI with this kind of mimic human driving type, technology. So if you take that a step further, the other guys, all the other EV manufacturers that don't have this, if it turns out that this method of FSD is far more successful than rules-based, where are they going to go to get their AI FSD? Licensing.
Yeah, they're going to go licensing. They're going to go to Tesla. They're
a revenue generator.
It becomes a revenue generator for Tesla. The other automakers, John, you've already said it. Ford is not Ford. Ford is 500 companies that feed up a conglomerate that assembles the final product. Fisker does that same thing. They contract all their pieces out, and then they're even contracting the final assembly.
Right.
It's going to happen.
The only reason Tesla got so good at all of these various technologies that they had to incorporate to make an EV was because there was no one to go to for them to license. There was no one to copy. Right. That was one of the things that we found with these 3 Chinese Roadsters. The reason they ended up in China in 2010 was for a reverse engineering project, because in 2010 there really weren't any EVs out there that were worthy enough of doing reverse engineering to figure out how to build your own electric car.
Exactly.
John, question for you. Of all the other EV manufacturers, which one looked the most interesting to you besides Tesla, of course?
Yeah, I would say probably, I think the one that's going that's just probably biggest top of mind is probably Rivian. I think, with the investment from Amazon, I believe, I don't know if it's still true, but they invested 20%, or they own 20% of the company, Amazon does. But with all of those, I'm seeing all of those Rivian delivery trucks all over my neighborhood. And I could just imagine, they're at some point, Amazon would be able to get rid of UPS as being that last mile delivery. But really, I think what Rivian is doing and how they kind of tackled the truck and family SUV market, kind of again starting that upward stream, and then also tackling the commercial side with the delivery trucks. And I think that they're poised to potentially even at some point come out with a semi, and potentially even a sedan. There's still a lot of struggles, I think, and things that they have to navigate through. I think, again, part of keep me honest here if you can correct me. But I think they've also outsourced a lot of their stuff, and I don't know how much of their own building of the vehicle is actually their own intellectual property. I mean, I think that's what will make Tesla different. And obviously, so I don't have to go down that rabbit hole of why Tesla's better. But I think Rivian's interesting. And then everything else is just kind of you kind of just need to wait and see. I think we don't quite know yet how Lucid, how Fisker, how VinFast, and all these other companies will do. I mean, if I was potentially buying another EV today, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't really want to buy something that I know may not be around. Obviously, when I bought Tesla, that was the case.
Yeah.
But it was
Mhm.
just one of those things when you got in it, you just saw it. Whereas you get in some of these other cars, that's not the case. I've been in a Rivian before. I've toured the R1S, and they're overall just well made, decently. The technology is decent to do well, and they're also solving a portion of the market that Tesla really isn't quite yet. Right, the
Right.
Rivian R1T is obviously just going to be the traditional truck. So if you're going to get a Ford Lightning versus a Rivian R1T, I would go with the Rivian R1T all day. And then even the family SUV size, like there's nothing better right now than the R1S.
Hmm.
Right.
So as far as like, 7 or 8 seater, like the Model X can hold it. I have a Model X, but it just doesn't have the space like the R1S. But would I buy a Rivian outside of the supercharging network right now? It's going to be adopted in a couple of years, or over the next couple of years, they're going to go to the NACS standard. But from now until then, it's not something that I could say, hey, ask my wife to go from San Francisco to San Diego on the Electrify America network. I wouldn't want to put her through that.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where, yeah, so Rivian's probably what I got my eye on the most. But for a lot of the other ones that are coming out right now, BYD is doing some interesting stuff, but they're also, heavily funded by the Chinese government. So
Hmm.
they can sell their vehicles at a huge loss because it's about adoption versus actually like trying to get some good profit, and they're like being heavily subsidized. So it's just I think just like anything, Tesla doesn't need to be the only car manufacturer doing this. There can be multiple companies involved. Like market share for Tesla always being the king in that space doesn't necessarily matter as much to me just because of the amount. But yeah, I would agree with kind of your earlier statement about I really think that Tesla's almost going to be the way to see this is Tesla's almost going to be like the chip inside of almost every car down the road, because not only from a software perspective, but also charging perspective, because
Right.
there is no company that is building software like Tesla is. People got mad at Elon when he said patents are stupid or something like that when he was talking. It was in context with SpaceX. But I think that's the way that they operate, is that they're innovating at a rate where it's like they're not worried about risk and liability. They're just trying to create the best products and running ruthlessly. And that's what's always going to keep them their competitive advantage, and what Elon has said. And so I think, we always talk about competitive advantages, but their sustainable competitive advantage is going to be their gigafactories. That's a product in every single launch that they do, is the innovation that they're creating. I mean, look at, if you think of like, they're going to create this next gen platform, which is going to be this compact car. It's going to be 30% cheaper than anything that they're producing today from a
Hmm.
cost perspective. And so they're just, the way that they're building, the way that they've even reshaped the automotive industry and how you build a car, which is, they're using these iron castings, which is just this like one piece, and it's essentially deleted thousands of parts. All of, legacy auto is starting to do that now. But they're continuing to innovate at these insane rates
Yeah.
to continue to bring down costs. And in a lot of ways, they also ultimately share those cost savings with the customer, and that's why, for better or for worse, you'll see the pricing go up and down. And overall it goes down, but
Right.
there was a big price adjustment on the S and X. So sorry, I know you asked one question and I went
No,
a different
no,
direction.
it's fine. What you mentioned about patents, I found interesting too. Is it's probably has to do with confidence a bit, because if you develop something and you innovate and then you patent it, it's most likely because you think that's not going to happen again, right? When a company like Tesla, which is innovating on steroids, why protect that? They're gonna have plenty of new, innovations that come along. So I think that has more to do with confidence. Um, One other thing that you mentioned: who's going to buy a car that's not going to be around? All right, good point. Of course, we don't always have a crystal ball to be able to predict that, but there are some indicators typically. Take the Tesla Roadster, for example. We talked to a lot of the early owners, and there is a significant portion of them that will freely say, I didn't think the company was going to make it.
Yeah.
There was constant threat of bankruptcy, and again, though, it's why Tesla owes a huge debt of gratitude to those early adopters that hung in there with them. This morning, I was at the dentist. And, that 6-month cleaning, right? And those guys know me there now. In fact, in one session 6 months ago or so, one of the other dentists from the other stall came into my area there, and I had my mouth full of gauze, and he's got his cell phone up. He says, "This is you, isn't it?" And of course, I couldn't comment on it. So this morning, same thing. They came in and they said, "Yeah, we noticed you got your Tesla Roadster out front. That is such a cool car. Are they still making them?" I said, "No." I said, "They stopped in 2011." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because they were selling them under cost. That would have finalized their trip to bankruptcy." But yeah. It's an interesting concept. Who's going to buy a car that you don't think is going to be around? Service is going to be missing, and support and all that.
John, another point you made that I really liked was the idea that Tesla doesn't have to be 60% of the market. In fact, in the future, it's probably going to be better for the market and for Tesla itself if Tesla is not 60% of the market. If their market share goes down, that means that the pie, as it were, of the EV market has expanded so fast that Tesla hasn't been able to fill it.
Hasn't been able to keep up.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole goal here is let's get fossil fuel burners off the roads, get them off the planet, and we begin to restore, hopefully, our home. John, do you have any questions for us? I feel like we're asking you all the questions. Anything that you're curious about?
No, I would love to know, even from your perspective, because obviously you all have been around since the early days of the Roadster, and so how have things have changed for you, especially as you, you've seen even Tesla owners, obviously Roadsters being at the high cost to like the Model 3 being $30,000 to $40,000. Like, how have you seen the community or the company as a whole just change, and how has that impacted or not impacted your business?
Well, I think the passion for Tesla or for their vehicles has always been there. And it was probably had a the large component there was that people had never driven anything like this before. Going back to my Prius days, by the way, my wife and I wanted to get something that would get 50 miles a gallon. It was during the first go around with gasoline going up and no end in sight, and you didn't know where it was going to end up. So we got something that gets 50 miles a gallon. But you know what intrigued me more than the savings was the fact that you could go about a mile at 30 miles and under on electric power. And that for me was a paradigm shift. I mean, I've been in electronics all my life, so this is not a new concept. I've seen golf carts, I've seen, kids' toys that operate on electricity. But to be actually able to commute with electric power involved, to me was fascinating. And that's what got me into the Tesla Roadster. Now, as you've probably heard, the Tesla sales centers, which many of the states would not allow them to sell anything. NADA is still a powerful lobby organization. But Tesla realized that two things you need to do. You need to take those cars into the high-end malls where the affluent people are, because we have luxury cars at that time when the Model S first came out. They're not going to be able to go to South Phoenix and effectively have a large market share. Secondly, they realized we need to let people drive these cars. As soon as you drive one of these, it sells itself. You don't need a commission-breathing sales rep giving you specs, overcoming objections, all the stuff that normal great salespeople do well. So that's been my experience. I'm sure Mark has his own.
Oh, I do. My first electric vehicle was actually a Kia Soul 2015 EV, and I got it at the beginning of 2017. Just the concept of being able to go freeway speeds on a battery. You think of okay, I'm running on a battery, and you think, okay, am I in some sort of Hot Wheels car or something? It's right. But this was a nice little vehicle, and the responsiveness, the zippiness, and stuff like that was amazing.
Mhm.
And I remember getting that car, and I'm a numbers guy, so I kind of did up the numbers and said, wow, if it's $2.30 a gallon for gas or more, I'm paying myself back by simply not having to buy fuel. The fuel I save is more than the car payment I'm paying.
Mhm.
And then the next thing you know, gas is $3.50 a gallon, and it's been that or higher ever since.
Right.
So being an EV enthusiast, to answer your question, John, seeing what's been going on over the last few years from Tesla and watching its evolution from a car company to an energy company, a battery storage company, and to everything else, it has been absolutely amazing to see.
Mhm.
So Tesla is so much more now than just a car company, and that's becoming one of their unique competitive advantages in this automotive space.
Sure. One other thing, John, for me was I'm a gearhead. So most people have a relationship with their mechanic. They give them their checkbook and they take their car there periodically. I tend to do all this stuff myself. The other clear game changer for me was, and wake up call, these things really don't require that type of maintenance. Spark plugs, tune-ups, belts, alternators, fuel system issues, periodic this and that. Except for brakes and tires, that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I found that as long as I got a really good quality tire,
Mhm.
can't go cheap on the tires because the cheap tires will wear out after 15,000 miles. Get the really good quality tire, and I'm good to go. And it worked out well.
Now, John, we realize you have an 11 o'clock deadline, so we're going to try to squeeze in a few more things before you have to go. What's your view on Twitter? Do you think it's going to make it, or?
Yeah, or Twitter or X is what we call it. Yeah, no, I would say the interesting thing about X is that it's going through a lot of adjustments, but I think it's one of those things where in very Elon fashion, I mean, he realized, okay, this company's running a little bit too fat, so he got rid of 80% of the company. And the company for the past, call it 10 months, has put out more in the past 10 months than the previous 6 years. And so when you think of like the amount of features that they're putting out and churning out with 20% of the staff is absolutely ridiculous. And also too, the way that they're building the monetization aspects of the platform are going to be a complete game changer in the social space. We are starting to, stuff that they're doing on their platform, other companies are now following suit. And so they're building the foundation. They may not have all the features, but at least the way that the monetization model is working right now definitely puts it at the top as far as being like, if you're a content creator, where are you going to go, and where are you going to like put out your information? And X is one of those platforms that, for something to be able to be found or for your voice to be heard, it's unlike any other platform. Again, like myself being a perfect example, starting a club, getting on Twitter or X, Twitter at the time, X now, and being able to communicate with the CEO of Tesla, like Elon. I mean, the Elon interview came through Twitter. It was me responding and asking him, hey, are you free tomorrow afternoon, or something like that? Like, hey, when are we going to do this interview? And him literally responding on Twitter. And what other platform can you really do that on? That's just kind of like unheard of. And so I think that's one of the huge things about this platform. I don't think is going anywhere. I think in very Elon fashion, everyone's going to continue to scrutinize it, undervalue it, not think it's going to go anywhere. And what's going to happen, he's going to change the whole game of social networking, of content creation, of I think that's just how he is, right? I mean, you have the world's greatest mind now focusing on a specific platform. He's given the operational reins to the new CEO, and he's taking on the chief product officer or chief tech officer role. And that's kind of like what he's like really good at. He doesn't want to be stuck in the weeds. He had to do that for the first 6 months. Otherwise the company was going to go bankrupt. But yeah, I'm really bullish on what they're doing. I think there's a lot that's going to there's a very, very bright future. I'll put it that way. I mean, it's where like we've doubled down on it just because, again, we started that communication and that conversation with him. And it's just only grown from there. Now we're one out of like 100 and I think 25 people he actually subscribes to on X in the world. So it's just like, it's one of those things where, you know, we've put our effort and our time on there, and thankfully we've been able to kind of, you know, reap some of those benefits and rewards from investing in the platform over the years, not just when he took it over.
Sure. You know, we've got, I know our team has a couple of questions as well. I'm going to throw up a question that Cass had. She wanted to find out if you could tell us more about the Tesla takeover in Europe that's coming up.
Yeah. So we run the largest event in North America for Tesla owners or enthusiasts. And we've had 3 years running now, which is insane. It's only been 3 years. We had Elon's mom, May Musk, come as our keynote speaker at the end of July this past year, and spoke with us for an hour. We even grabbed dinner with her. And so it was one of those things where, you know, it's really just bringing the community together, geeking out on your Tesla, having almost every accessory exhibitor or major accessory company or anything that is Tesla related is pretty much present. We had over 60 exhibitors. And so we had such an amazing event in the US. We had over 2,200 people in our 3rd year. So now we're actually going to be making this event global. We're taking it to Austria and Singapore next year. The Tesla owners of Austria is actually going to be running it on our behalf, Tesla Takeover Europe. And it's going to be kind of similar, but this event actually could be bigger than what we're doing in the US because the Europe is landlocked, as we all know, and we're working with collectively, thankfully, because we are part of the owners program, we can, Tesla Owners of Austria has really good relationships with a lot of the other clubs. I have a decent relationship with a lot of the other clubs like the UK, Belgium, France, like all Norway, all the big clubs, the heavy hitters out there. We're going to bring them all together into a place called Flachau, Austria. It's right on the highway, right in the center of like the ski, not during the ski season, but summertime. So there's a lot of room for us to just bring potentially thousands of people to one area. We're going to do a big light show. We had the largest one up until the Germany one recently. We had 172 Teslas doing a light show, final countdown, and Can't Stop This Feeling in San Luis Obispo. So yeah, we're going to be taking that there. It's going to be a similar vibe, but again, it's going to be potentially even bigger, probably obviously with a more European focus. So more of the people in the Tesla world from a Europe, like a lot more of the European accessory companies and potentially even influencers are going to be there. So we're just now kind of like in the planning process for that. That's going to be May 24th through the 26th for Tesla Takeover Europe, and then the US based one is going to be July 27th through the 28th of 2024 as well. So we haven't landed the Singapore date yet, but yeah, it's just you know, that's what we're about. It's like a community put on by the community, for the community, by the community. So yeah, it should be really, really exciting.
That's very cool. And then we have one here from Aaron that's along the same line. I thought I'd ask as well. Is there anything that you might be able to tell us about next year's event on the 27th and 20th of July? You know, anything new or exciting or that you'd be able to disclose?
Exactly. Yeah, of course. So we actually decided to, because every year, and you all have been in the space a long time, so you would get it too. Especially these two companies, SpaceX and Tesla, are kind of always intertwined. Similar bankrupt stories. Obviously, Elon at the helm of running both of them. So every year we would have this event, and everyone's like, hey, we would love to hear more about SpaceX and, you know, all the stuff that's going on in that world. And there's not really a space con if you think about it. So there's like a Comic-Con, you know, but there's not really like, we've kind of created what you would call a Tesla con, or like just like a Tesla world type thing. But everyone's kind of like, hey, why don't you just kind of like bring SpaceX? So we are actually, so the events that are happening in Asia and Europe are going to be Tesla Takeover, because they're not ready for kind of combining things. But the US one is going to be called the X Takeover, X being the essence of everything. So it's actually going to become, about Tesla is still 90%, but we're going to add an aspect of SpaceX into it. We already have a keynote speaker, several keynote speakers, specifically on the space side, one that I'm really excited about, and obviously some influencers on the SpaceX side that are coming. And then we're finalizing, hopefully over the next couple months, we can finalize some of the Tesla keynote speakers, again, outside of influencers. But it's always going to be hard to top like bringing a Musk, so we're going to do our best, but it's going to be fun. Again, it's very rare to have an event that is literally put on by the community, by Tesla owners, for Tesla owners. So that's kind of like the beauty of the essence of this event versus like, some of the other events that are just run by production teams and things like that. It's still good events, but again, this is what's the beauty of this event is like we as owners get to put our vision and bring what we want to it. So, and this third year, I would say it was really special. Like it's kind of like, you start as the Oakland A's and you work your way up. I felt like this year, we were really able to run an amazing, well-run event. And just when you think of the first year to us, like me carrying chairs and tables myself to now running an event where, I was able to leave early to go to like the May dinner, and knowing that someone else is going to take care of this is a huge deal by literally only year 3. So pretty exciting stuff.
John, you're very passionate. Every industry needs a promoter like you. And I'm sure that Tesla is very pleased to have you involved in promoting the entire concept of what Tesla's about, and SpaceX for that matter. If you're ever in Phoenix, we would love to take you on a tour of Gruber Motor Company. It would be like going back in time about 10, 15 years in early Tesla when there was no Model S yet, because what you will see is just miles of Tesla Roadsters. And you can see them apart, you can see them finished, you can see them as collectible cars. Would love to have you and take you on a tour. And you're going to also have a wonderful time. Yeah, you're going to have a wonderful time in Austria. That's the area that I was born in, just north of there, actually Bavaria. And you couldn't have picked a more beautiful place on the planet to have a Tesla takeover. And say hi to all of those Austrian guys for me. A lot of them know me as well.
Yeah, we'll get to one comment. We're gonna once you're gone, John, we'll get to a bunch of our comments. There is one we wanted to share though. Ramon Hurt on YouTube says, "I need the stock to go up so I can buy a Tesla and hang out with John."
There you go. By the way, Ramon is and he still maybe he is a Tesla employee or an ex-Tesla employee. So. John, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure.
We really appreciate the time. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of what you all are doing. So keep up the amazing work, and hopefully I can make it out to Phoenix sometime soon.
Perfect.
Hope
Good
so.
luck.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to get to some of the questions now. We've got a bunch.
Yes, let's go ahead and get to some of these. We've got... First, George is chiming in. He was one of our early ones this morning. We've got about an hour of questions, guys, and we'll get to as many as we can of these. He says, "Good morning." Highlander joins us as well on YouTube. Says, "I'm on the road, George, pulled over to eat." And then George responds, "Welcome, Highlander." So welcome to both of you guys.
And what I've noticed is when we're busy doing interviews, our audience tends to talk to each other. So that was rewarding as well, seeing some of that taking place.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. We have over 100 messages.
100 messages. Outstanding. You too, Richard Flenke, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
He says, "Good morning." Highlander, which is actually Scott Buchanan. He's famous, he says. Yes, he is. Roger Starkey, good evening. George is with us. He says, "I'm going to start a Mr. Pete fan club." Oh, please.
That'd be good. Okay, you guys can continue scrolling. We're on Highlander now. And Highlander's famous phrase, kindness is always free.
It is. And then YouTube, Anthony Venditti, one of our regulars, he says, "Hi, guys, got a question for you. Do you think at some point in time the UAW will get into Tesla. I wanted to approach that with John, and the only way that would happen is if the UAW was actually able to extract wages that exceed Tesla wages. I'm sure that there are workers there that would become interested in making more money.
There might be, but one of the things that John had said that I think was going to weigh so hard against UAW is the number of people who get into Tesla, exercise their stock options, and 6 or 7 years later, they're a millionaire. That is a really, really powerful statement that's going to keep the UAW out of Tesla for longer than they would be otherwise.
And then when you think about it, will Tesla continue a stock option plan if there's a gun being held to their head with wages? I can't imagine why they would.
I can't imagine why they would either.
These factory workers then need to look back at their union for these types of benefits.
Right. And that's what they're trying to do right now with Ford, Stellantis, and Dodge.
Yeah. By the way, there was an interesting statistic. 10 years ago, if you had bought stock in Ford, Stellantis, which it's gone through a number of variations, GM, or Tesla, where would your net gain be? And it was like over 1,000% with Tesla, and the other guys were actually negative.
Oh yeah, it's been something, I tell you. Its own.
So stock options would not be that popular or convincing for the employees that work for the incumbents currently.
786 Adam 23 on Instagram says, "Let's start the night."
Okay. YouTube, Ramon Hurt, who is a Tesla employee. We have labor laws and HR now. No need for union reps. So he's still with Tesla. Well, thank you for adding that. Yes, with a good HR department and a stellar compensation plan, they don't stand a chance.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult. There will be certain people that have come from the traditional auto industry that might say, we need that union rep, and it's going to be more because they're going to say, look at them, they can work 32 hours and get paid for 40.
I got to throw this in there, and I'm probably going to raise a whole bunch of hackles here, but TSMC is a very large chip manufacturer that is currently being built in the state of Arizona, and the goal is to create a second version of that from the version in Taiwan. Well, we do work there, as we have many of our customers and vendors that do work there. And invariably, they tell us about the union influence there and how inefficient it is. Chris came by Friday last week. He says, you know what? One guy is working up there doing some cabling, and you got to have 6 spotters, 1 on the scissor lift, 2 on the ladder, and it goes on and on. The inefficiencies. And of course, in the union world, you can't just simply participate and pick up the slack when someone else isn't able to do it, because that's not your job.
Yeah.
So they have to get another union guy that is trained on that particular item or that particular task. The unions had their place at one point in history. Don't get me wrong here. I'm fully aware that child labor laws were one of the best things that straightened out this country. But are they still relevant today? That's the question.
Well, I think that's part of what's going on is the UAW is fighting for its life, even though it doesn't say that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite authors and books is John Saforic, and he writes a book called The Wealthy Gardener. And one of the concepts he puts out in that book, I've started reading it again with my son, and his concept says, if you want to just get by in life, work 40 hours. You don't start getting ahead at all in life and building wealth and making a better life for yourself until you get past that 40 hours.
Totally true. Yes, absolutely true.
And that is one of his base concepts of making a better life for yourself, your family, your legacy. And I completely agree with it. It's when you get beyond 40 hours and stop watching that clock that you actually start to be able to do the things that make a difference. Well, the union is directly fighting that. Their entire philosophy, we want 32 hours of work for 40 hours of pay, is diametrically opposed to that concept.
It's not going to support the host.
No.
You know, the manufacturer of that business is not going to be competitive in a marketplace, and that's the other side of it. Here we are with heavy pressure on various markets from from different countries. China, for example,
Yeah.
they're beginning to dominate the automotive market. And this, again, timing is terrible. If anybody at UAW is listening, at this point in time, I think you should just hunker down like the writer's strike.
Yeah.
Bite the bullet, educate yourself, choose a different career if you feel that there's no future in what you're doing. But at this point in time, to lay down the gauntlet and demand more is a dangerous time. You'll find yourself out of work eventually.
It really is. So George has a question for us that we will ask John later on. He says, does John have any new insight or cool information on the Cybertruck with him being in the loop with Tesla and Elon? George, we'll reach out to John and see if he has any comments on that.
Ramon says, can you actually have a car start up with unionized labor on them?
The quick answer to that is no.
Okay.
The way the labor laws in the United States work is that the workforce itself has to vote, and a majority of that workforce has to say, yes, we are going to invite union representation in to represent us.
Yeah.
And until that happens, nothing that the UAW can do until they can get a majority of the workers to come in and vote that they want to have that organization.
Boy, this next one is going to create a lot of polarization. Richard Flentke says, President Biden is on TV right now at a UAW picket line.
Yeah. Yeah. And the opposite is occurring as well. President Biden is known to be on the progressive or left side of the spectrum. Former President Donald Trump, who is campaigning again, has announced that he will be with Ford and or General Motors at the factories representing the management, basically. He'll be going on the other side.
It just seems to me that at that level, impartiality is far more effective than taking a side.
Yeah. Yeah.
YouTube, Tesla Dave 86. Great value, great fun, great investment in us. Well, thank you. Facebook, Anthony Venditti again. Do you really think the big three are not making money? LOL. Mary Barra makes $30 million a year, and GM is not making any money. Don't be fooled.
Anthony, one of the articles that we had later was about, is Mary Barra effective at GM or not, and for as much as she's paid. And I did a quick look up. I went right to that bottom line number, net income, the what's called the EBITDA number, earnings before taxes, depreciation, amortization, stuff like that. And General Motors between 2020 and 2022 made $25 billion of profit in those 3 years. So you can't say that the companies are not making anything. They definitely are. Mm-hmm. And General Motors is having a stronger 2023 than they had in 2022. Just like the President of the United States gets blamed and gets the credit for the economy, whether it's his fault or not, Mary Barra is going to get credit for General Motors making as much money as they have these last few years. She's doing something right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ramon Hurt, look at the state of the two biggest union towns in American history, Detroit and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Enough said.
Highlander, you too. Fully charged is awesome, and I'm one of the pro-Scotland independence leaders. That's saying something.
That is. Definitely is. Roger Starkey, Ford, he says, Chapter 11, restructure, rise as an EV company in Tennessee.
Yeah, you've said that before. And that may be their only way to continue in this industry.
Well, and you think about it, Ford is the one of those three companies that has said, we're going to split off the EV division.
Right.
And maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
Having to do with government bailouts in Chapter 11.
Yeah. Facebook, Trevor Galbraith, EV companies need to be vertically oriented electronics companies. Combustion engine guys are going to struggle. Well, it's the same thing we've been saying about Tesla. Tesla is not a car company.
Yes.
It looks like one. It even behaves like one at times, but it's a tech company.
Yeah. It's a tech company, and I completely agree with you. As these companies do become more vertically oriented, two things will happen though. First, they will get more profitable. Second, you're going to have those progressive or left-leaning on this political spectrum people try to come after them with anti-monopoly lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
I see that coming for Tesla at some point.
Yeah, as they get larger. YouTube, Richard Flenke, he says, there was a writer's strike? Huh, I never noticed.
Yes.
You know, I don't either. I don't watch TV, but my wife does. And she does point out regularly that there are no new shows currently. Well, let me give you a perspective on that. While there are no new shows coming out, I guarantee you that those employers are taking a heavy look at AI. And my vote on this is AI, if not currently, it will eventually do a better job of writing these scripts and producing the content that is popular because it's able to zero in on exactly what we want.
You know, that was one of the main arguments. I guess the strike has been tentatively resolved. One of the main arguments between the writers and the studios was that the writers were afraid the studios were going to be feeding their scripts into ChatGPT,
Right.
and then ChatGPT would be producing additional scripts that would look, feel, and taste like what the writers do,
Right.
and the writers wouldn't be able to get credit for it.
And it's certainly capable of doing that, and there are no legal precedents yet to prevent that from occurring.
Right, and so striking was arguably having that written into a labor agreement was the only way for them to get around that.
Well, guys, just so you know, the actors strike that has not been resolved yet is still dealing with AI in that the studios want to be able to use the likeness of the actors in perpetuity forever via AI without giving them credit.
Amazing. So we don't need your body anymore. We're going to keep you at age
Or your
36, and
voice
we're going
if
to
you're a
keep the
voice actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
YouTube, Ramon Hurt, movies can be made anywhere in the world now, just like cars. Of course, they have an accent, but they can be made anywhere.
Yes, they can.
Netflix has tons of foreign movies now. Good point.
You know, and you know, to your point about the accents, I remember a good friend, a classmate in college, grew up much of his life in the United Kingdom. He did not speak with any sort of an accent whatsoever. He said, my dad was bilingual. He was English, born and raised in England. He would go to France, speak to the French people, speak to the tourists, and there were times when people would come to him and when he had to slip into English because somebody didn't understand French, and they would say, wow, you can speak English really good without any accent at all. I didn't know French people could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't French, he was English. So movies can be made anywhere in the world, and accents can just as easily be unlearned.
And let's not negate the fact that feeding a voice track into AI can easily remove those nuances of accent.
Absolutely. Ramon also says labor unions only matter when the labor can't be done somewhere else. Yeah, supply and demand. I think
Right.
I'd agree with that. And so he says Ramon goes on to say the Teamsters actually have to be here. So they do have some power.
Now, George is chiming in. He says the TV Writers Union should be embarrassing AI by maybe having some union people run the AI for shows. That would actually create a new job title or two. AI is definitely not going away. Just saying. Oh, it's definitely not going away, George. You got that.
Yeah, most definitely. Roger Starkey on YouTube again comes to say as next step on the good drivers videos. So this was referring back to when we were talking about the
Right.
videos. Feed AI all the videos, and then it asks, is this one good?
Reducing the workload.
So you don't have people watching
Right.
these videos determining if they're good or not. You have people sending a group of videos to AI,
Mm-hmm.
and AI coming back and saying, is this one good? I think it is, or I think it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Great idea.
YouTube, Roger Starkey, the best move for Rivian is being released from the Amazon exclusive deal and being able to sell in the open market. Good point.
Yeah, that's. I think once they get to that 100,000 vans or so, I have a feeling that they're going to be able to take those delivery vans and, the post office or places in Europe, the European Postal Service, that's going to be next.
So Richard is giving us a little bit of play on words here with YouTube. Richard Flinke says, VinFast, a.k.a. Slim Fast, at $12.84. Well, that went down quickly, but I'm sure a lot of people made money. Remember, it went up, what was it, $94?
It was 90. Let's see, I'm looking at it right now. The high was $93, 52-week high.
Yeah.
The 52-week low was $11.61, and it's, as of this moment, trading at $12.96.
And of course, in the stock market, if your timing was good and you followed the old edict of sell high and buy low, you would have made some money.
Yes.
Why do we wear sunglasses? Eba_3 says from YouTube. Well, we've got a video that will be released at some point that that will give our audience and the whole world a reason for that. But in the meantime, I see Richard perking up. He's got something to say now.
I do. We might not be able to tell you why we wear sunglasses just yet. But we can tell you where you can find these amazing sunglass holders. You can get them on Gruber Motor Company's website, grubermotors.com, and they are $79.99 unless you use code Richard or Aaron. You get 10% off. They are magnetic too, by the way, so you can just kind of stick it on something that's metal and it will stay.
So for those of you thinking that the only reason we wear sunglasses is to promote the sunglasses holder, that's the chicken before the egg scenario. The sunglasses were there well before the sunglass holders. YouTube, Tesla owner, Silicon Valley. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. George on YouTube also has a comment that says, with robo-taxis coming out, why even own a vehicle in the near future? Like back in the day, we didn't need a cell phone because payphones were available to use everywhere when needed.
Interesting, yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. And, at some point, car ownership is going to decline. I don't think it's ever going to completely go away.
Yeah. Of course, it's tough to predict anything these days with the exponential increase in technology and the rapid change. YouTube, Highlander says, Toledo-Detroit in the house. Go Team Gruber. Thank you.
Thank you, Highlander.
And then we find out that when Ramon Hurt from YouTube, who's been chiming in regularly in this session, started working at Tesla, he says it was in 2015 when all they made was a Model S. It's been fascinating watching it grow. And you're right, Ramon. We deal with a lot of Tesla people, both current and ex-Tesla people. And there isn't one that will invariably say something like, it was the high point of my life. It was an exciting time. It was incredibly hard work, long, demanding hours. Yeah. But it built my skills, and I would replay it in a heartbeat.
I'm not sure I've ever talked to somebody who worked at Tesla who has said anything other than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Roger Starkey says, I think Rob Maurer posted today, Tesla maintenance over 10 years, about 7% of the selling price of the car. BMW, an ICE vehicle, something like 26%.
Amazing.
Roger, that's a great point. The press that comes out is when somebody has to replace their battery.
Right.
And suddenly they're down $22,000 on a car, on a car that might be worth 30. And but what doesn't make the press is that the number of people who need to replace their batteries is somewhere south of 1%.
Yeah.
It's such a low amount.
YouTube Highlander says, I'm still trying to work for Tesla. I turned them down in 2017 for the Grand Rapids stamping plant. Proof that I'm an idiot. Well, you could have taken the job, exercised some stock options, and probably retired by now.
Yes. Roger Starkey says that X was mainly about FUD reduction, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I'm still personally not happy. He says it's still kind of a toxic environment in his opinion.
Okay. Ramon says, well, now you have many more locations to try to work at, Highlander. There you go.
There you go. Watch Rich Rebuilds channel. That's George again. Says, besides running the Tesla fan club, what does the guest John do for a living? Is it a Tesla-related career?
You know, we should have asked that, and I had it on the list, but we didn't get to it. The only clue I have, and by the way, watch his videos. They have some YouTube videos. Something in the financial world is a full-time job. And the other question I was going to ask him: at what point in time will you transition and make this this project that you're on full-time?
Yeah, because it sounds like it has really, really grown and blown up on him.
Ramon says, working in Fremont sucks. Working in the Bay Area sucks. Lots of traffic. Cost of living sucks. In the Bay Area, too. Now, lots of crime. I'm thinking about trying to get into Giga Mexico when that ever happens.
Well, Ramon, again, I'll just a quick nugget here since we're short on time. One of the things I saw in the press this week is that the environmental impact and all of the permits and stuff that Tesla needs to build Giga Mexico, they've all been approved.
Oh, that happens in other countries.
Yes, it happens in other countries.
It's been 2 years trying to get our burn building back operational.
Yeah.
And it's been 2 years of hassles with the city permit process.
Yes, and so the permits have now been approved. And one of the things about these permit approvals, 26 months. That's how long they have now to build and get this factory operational. Otherwise, they would have to go back into the permitting process if it takes longer. That means that come the end of 2025, at the latest, Giga Mexico is probably going to be up and running.
Well, you know, Shanghai was operational in, what, a year, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
A lot of absence of restrictions and regulations and permit processes. But, yeah, the construction started fairly quickly.
Yeah, they went in, they got it done, and now they're producing. So Roger Starkey, I'm in London. No sympathy from me. Wink with a wink.
Okay, we've got George weighing in on our wardrobe today. Looking quickly to see what we're wearing. He says Mark's is good. He wore black and gray shirt today. No tie in the colors of Mr. Pete's shirt with a guest's color shirt. Okay.
Okay, yeah, because John had a kind of a gray shirt on.
He did?
So, Ramon Hurt on YouTube, former employee, worked for Reman Battery. I can tear apart a Model S battery pack by myself.
You know, Ramon, the team there in Lathrop at the Reman Center was watching our videos. They contacted one of our vendors that gave us a tool, the Fein Company, F-E-I-N, which actually has an oscillating blade that allows that lid to be removed. And from what they were invited to Tesla, by the way, and they're now selling this product. But they said that what they were using was air tools to try to get that lid off. And that's a rough way to go. We tried that too.
Yeah.
And we tried the manual method. But boy, this Fein Tools, it's actually a tool that was repurposed from the medical world to take off casts on people with broken limbs. And you obviously don't want it to cut the skin, so create any damage. And this battery is just as sensitive. You certainly don't want to cut into the cells and ground them out.
Right, exactly. It's a fascinating tool, and the way that it vibrates is just something else. Roger Starkey says, Tesla, it's not just stock options. It's 15% under on the lowest priced over 6 months. And he's got a question mark on that. I'm not sure the answer to that, Roger, but the concept is sound with what I've heard about stock options in the past. When you get an option, usually your option is to be able to buy the stock for something that's well under the current market rate. It's usually fixed at the time the option, the chance for the option is made available. And then if you exercise the option, you may have to spend the money to get the stock, but if you decide, you could sell that stock that day and get the money from the stock back.
And you pay some taxes as well, because the delta between the current price and what your option was is taxable.
And if you think about it, minus 15% on the lowest price over the last 6 months. Here's just kind of a quick one. 6 months ago, where was Tesla?
Wasn't it like 100, just over 100 per share?
That's right.
Oh my God. That's $85 stock then.
Yeah.
At $240 or $50, what it is
that's
today.
Almost $270 today now. And so that's where the stock option values come in.
So the rule is collect and exercise your stock options. Do not let them expire.
That's right.
George is saying, the way you guys are reading off all the messages all at once sounds like when the radio stations used to read off school closings for snow days, LOL. You know, I remember those days, George, and you really carefully paid attention to the radio whenever there was a lot of snowfall outside, and then there's a lot of cheering when it finally was announced that, oh, my high school is closed down for the day.
I still remember as a kid, you'd stand in the house, the bus is coming in 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever.
Right.
And man, you're standing by that radio because it's been snowing all night. And you think, is there a chance? Is there a chance? And so they read off the list, and they'll read if the school's open too.
Yeah. See, these guys in Phoenix never experienced that.
Yeah, I know.
You guys are almost there. Keep going.
All right. Ramon Hurd, Peter, would you be able to run your business profitably if you were forced to use unionized labor? Hell no.
No.
No way. Well, you're the financial guy.
No, not,
Both of us weighing in on this.
Not a chance. Not a chance. We would. It would be a small 2 or 3 person business once again.
Yeah. YouTube, Ramon Hurt. I spent 10 years working in the semiconductor industry. None of the companies are unionized.
Yeah, you're going to find, Ramon, that most of the companies in more modern industries and not long-term industries like automotive or manufacturing are not unionized, partly because the purpose of the unions has faded over time.
Mm-hmm.
And while there still may be a place for unions in our society, especially from the 1980s through about the mid 2010s, just culturally, the unions had very little power, very little ability to get into new industries, and you look at the people that work in those industries, and they're still some of the highest paid people in any industry anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Much to the detriment of their employers, which are trying to maintain profitability and survive in business.
Yes.
Ramon Hurt, imagine the price of electronics if there was a semiconductor worker union. I don't even want to think about it, Ramon, but you're right.
Yeah. Intel would be out of business probably.
YouTube, Roger Starkey, Cybertruck. My bet for the launch is Halloween. Remember, this is Elon. Good point.
Oh, that's a good point. That's true. I hadn't thought about it. The Cybertruck formal launch, rollout, and stuff. They were saying in past months that it might be by the end of the third quarter. Well, the end of the third quarter is Friday.
Yeah, and it is, of course, not close enough to April 1st, which would be another day that Elon might pick.
Oh yes, definitely would.
Roger Starkey, the big three are making money on the wrong products. Amen, brother.
Yes.
YouTube, George is saying, Mr. Pete, I like the Alaskan ship cruise background shot. Yeah, we should probably describe that here in a moment. Feels like the temps there are worth it being 59 degrees here today in New York. Okay, the reason I chose this, by the way, the prompt that I used was, give us a news studio, a futuristic news studio at the North Pole. And this is what it came up with. And the reason I chose it is here in Phoenix, we've had a heat wave that is just breaking this week. And we're all excited about the fact that you can actually go outside now early morning and have a cup of coffee on the patio without feeling like you're sweating.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and we had, just for our listeners, and Pete, because you lived it too, there were days this summer where the temperature got down to 97 degrees.
Down to, yeah.
So I would wake up early in the morning. In the desert environment, your coolest temperatures are right after sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
I typically wake up a little bit before sunrise, even in the summer. And so I would wake up early morning. I'd go up to my office at my house. I would take a look at the thermometer, and it would say 100 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 4:20 in the morning.
Right.
And I'm thinking, holy cow.
Yep.
And then that morning, officially, the temperature would get down to 97.
And you hear your air conditioner running, and
all the
your
time.
electric bill is accruing for
Of
the month.
course.
Yeah.
Of course.
YouTube, George says, my earlier writers union comment, he says, I meant embrace, not embarrass. Okay. All right.
Yep. And Mike Corkery on YouTube says, kind of like electric, with the hashtag, the future is bright.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Ramon Hurt, the Tesla employee, says, I lived in Phoenix in the early 90s when it got to 122 degrees. Remember, they shut down Sky Harbor Airport because the instrumentation on the planes did not exceed 120 degrees.
I remember that.
And they weren't sure they could fly.
Well, and I remember my wife, who was at the time my girlfriend, she got this shirt, and it had Arizona's new math: 6 plus 26 plus 90 equals 122 degrees. Which so now I know the date as well.
Right,
It was June 26, 1990.
Well, we're coming to the end of our podcast this morning. We've been an hour and a half. It's 11:30. We're going to wrap up here. Tomorrow, we've got our Tesla Roadster podcast. Invite you to join us. We'll have a lot of updates on the 3 Chinese orphan barn find Roadsters.
Yes.
And what the current disposition is. Thursday, we'll have again our EV podcast. Friday morning, as the other team comes in with Critical Power, and they're gaining momentum. They're going to be raffling off a flat screen.
Flat screen TV, yeah.
Yeah.
And real quick, Highlander just came in. Richard, I believe, is researching this now. He said, awesome podcast. Didn't get to hydrogen story. Maybe next time. So we did get your package, Highlander. We're working on that.
Actually, Richard was getting updated on that. We were going to insert that. We'll do it Thursday.
We'll do that Thursday.
Yeah. Again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you guys. And we'll have more guests like John Stringer and eventually Elon. So stay tuned.
Take care.